In 146 BC, one of the greatest cities the ancient world had ever built was erased from the face of the earth in a single week. This is what it looked like from the inside. A walk through Carthage on its final day reveals a city built for commerce, but transformed for war. Its residential quarters are a maze of narrow, unpaved streets, some so steep they require stairs. The houses, many rising up to 6 stories, present blank whitewashed walls to the street, their life centered around internal courtyards that provide light and collect water in private cisterns. The air, normally filled with the sounds of a global port, now carries the scent of smoke from forges and the sea. At the southeastern edge of the city lies its engineering heart, a legendary double harbor. The outer rectangular port was built for hundreds of merchant ships, but beyond it lies the circular military harbor, or Cothon, hidden from outside view. This naval base is a testament to the city's centuries of maritime power, but that power has been broken. For 3 years, Roman legions have besieged the city, constructing their own walls and blockades to cut it off from any relief. Now, the final breach has been made. Within 24 hours, this intricate urban landscape will cease to exist. This is the story of the last day of Carthage. For nearly 7 centuries, Carthage stood on a promontory above the Mediterranean, a Phoenician colony turned commercial empire, its massive walls stretching 33 kilometers around one of the busiest ports in the ancient world. Now, after 3 years of Roman siege, it has hours left. How did the greatest city of the Western Mediterranean arrive at this moment? Before the final siege, that was unparalleled wealth. To understand what was about to be destroyed, one must first understand what Carthage built. This was not merely a city, it was the logistical heart of a commercial empire that stretched across the Western Mediterranean. For centuries, Carthage controlled the narrow strait between North Africa and Sicily, a crucial choke point for all sea traffic. Any ship carrying tin from Britain, silver from Spain, or luxuries from the East had to pass through its sphere of influence, and with its magnificent harbor, Carthage became one of the busiest ports in the ancient world. The city was a center of both trade and production. Carthaginian artisans were known for their dyed textiles, intricate glasswork, and embroidered silks. Their agricultural techniques were so advanced that their manuals on farming would later be studied and preserved by their Roman conquerors. From its shores, Carthage exported wine, olive oil, and a prized fermented fish sauce called garum, which was in high demand across the Mediterranean basin. In return, caravans ventured deep into Africa for gold and ivory, while its ships returned from distant ports laden with valuable raw materials. This commercial empire was protected by a powerful navy, and the heart of that navy was the Cothon. Imagine 2 connected artificial harbors, shielded from the open sea. The first was a large rectangular port for the hundreds of merchant ships that were the lifeblood of the economy. A guarded channel led from there into a second circular harbor, a space entirely hidden from foreign eyes. This was the military Cothon. At its center sat a man-made island with a tall command tower, allowing for a full view of the fleet and the sea beyond. Arranged around the perimeter was a 2-story marvel of naval architecture. The lower level contained 220 individual, covered ship sheds, where warships could be built, repaired, and refitted in complete secrecy. Above these docks, vast warehouses stored the sails, oars, ropes, and provisions needed to maintain the fleet. The entire complex was a highly efficient, self-contained naval factory, engineered to project power across the sea. Even now, with the Roman blockade choking the city, this harbor represented the last vestige of the ingenuity that Rome sought to dismantle. Vast wealth could not secure peace with a rival power determined to eliminate it. The Third Punic War was not a conflict of equals, but the final act of a long rivalry. After 2 previous wars, Rome had imposed a severe treaty on Carthage, stripping it of its overseas territories, dismantling most of its navy, and forbidding it to wage war without Roman permission. For 50 years, Carthage complied, focusing on trade and rebuilding its economic prosperity. This economic recovery was so successful that it was perceived as a renewed threat in Rome, where a powerful political faction argued for the city's complete destruction. Rome sought a pretext for war, which it found when Carthage finally raised an army to defend its borders against a Roman allied neighbor. Citing a breach of the treaty, Rome declared war in 149 BC. A massive Roman army of over 80,000 men landed in North Africa. Hoping to appease the superpower, the Carthaginians surrendered hundreds of noble children as hostages, along with 200 sets of armor and 20 catapults. They believed this would be enough to avert disaster. The final Roman ultimatum proved them wrong: abandon the city entirely, moved least 10 miles inland, and allow the Romans to dismantle it. For a civilization whose entire identity and economy were tied to the sea, this demand was an effective death sentence. The city gates were shut, and a wave of desperate energy surged through the metropolis. The commercial hub transformed into a massive weapons factory. Workshops that once produced luxury goods began churning out swords and shields. Public buildings and temples were stripped of metal to be melted down for armaments. According to one account, the women of Carthage cut their long hair to be woven into ropes for new catapults. For 2 years, Carthage held out. But in 147 BC, a new Roman commander arrived who implemented a methodical and ruthless strategy. He tightened the Roman lines, constructed a massive mole to completely blockade the harbor, and began to systematically starve the city. By this final morning, the siege works were complete. A breach had been made in the walls, and the Roman legions were poised for the final assault. As the city braced for its end, its people turned not only to their fortifications, but also to their gods. It is in this context that one finds the most controversial aspect of Carthaginian life. On the outskirts of the city was an open-air enclosure, and then as the Tophet. To modern sensibilities, it is a disturbing place. But for the people of Carthage, it was a site of profound religious importance. Archaeological excavations have uncovered over 20 urns buried here, containing the cremated remains of infants, some only weeks old. For centuries, Roman and Greek writers, Carthage as enemies, described this as a location for all child sacrifice, painting vivid pictures of rituals dedicated to the god Baal-Hamon. For a long time, many historians dismissed these accounts as hostile propaganda, arguing instead that the Tophet was simply a special cemetery for infants who died of natural causes, a common tragedy in the ancient world. The archaeological evidence, however, suggests a more complex reality. The stone markers, or stelae, placed above the buried urns often bear inscriptions, recording a vow made to the gods, with some stating that the god had heard my voice and blessed me. This language is difficult to reconcile with the unexpected death of a child. Recent analysis has led many scholars to conclude that the lurid accounts from foreign sources may have been based in fact. This may have been a ritual of last resort, perhaps practiced by the elite in times of extreme crisis, representing the ultimate offering in hope of divine intervention. As the Roman army gathered for its final attack, it is hard to imagine that such desperate rituals did not take place in the Tophet, representing the last pleas of a dying city. The din began at the harbor, as Roman legionaries poured through the breaches in the fortifications. This was not a swift victory. The city's dense urban fabric had been turned into a defensive weapon. What followed was not a single battle, but a week-long struggle of urban warfare, fought street by street and house by house. The residential quarters near the port were a labyrinth of narrow alleys and 6-story apartment buildings. Each structure became a small fortress. As Roman soldiers forced their way down the streets, they were met with projectiles thrown from the rooftops. The defenders, a mix of soldiers and armed civilians, fought with the desperation of a populace with no other option. In response to the high casualties and slow progress, the Roman command altered its tactics. Soldiers were ordered to bypass the streets altogether and advance across the flat rooftops, laying down planks to bridge the gaps between buildings and clearing each structure from the top down. For 6 days, this gruesome block-by-block combat continued. To clear paths for the main body of troops and war machines, a new order was given: set the houses on fire. A massive inferno swept through the residential districts. The screams of those trapped inside, the wounded, the elderly, and children were added to the roar of the flames. The dead and debris piled so high in the streets that special work crews were needed to clear the bodies, just so the military advance could continue. The city was being systematically dismembered, one block at a time. The last of the defenders were pushed back to the Byrissa, the fortified hill that served as the city's acropolis and the site of the great temple of Eshmun. On the seventh day, with the fires closing in, a delegation emerged from the citadel to negotiate a surrender. Terms were negotiated, and their lives were spared. Approximately 50 starving men, women, and children filed out and were taken prisoner, all of them destined for the slave markets. A small group of Roman deserters who had fought for Carthage, knowing no mercy would be shown to them, took refuge in the temple itself, which was soon consumed by the spreading fires. After a week of brutal fighting, Carthage was silent. The city that had flourished for over 6 centuries had been annihilated in the week of fighting. The orders from the Roman Senate were absolute. The 50 survivors were sold into slavery. Then, for 10 days, the ruins of the city were systematically demolished. The story that the Romans sowed the fields with salt is a 19th century invention, but their intention was the same, to ensure that nothing could grow there again. A formal curse was pronounced upon the land, forbidding anyone from ever rebuilding on the site of Punic Carthage. For a century, the site lay mostly empty, a haunted monument to Rome's power. The location, however, was simply too strategic to ignore forever. Julius Caesar, and later the Emperor Augustus, would found a new city on the ruins, Roman Carthage. This new city grew to become one of the most important in the Roman Empire, and at its peak, its population may have approached 500,000 people. Today, the ruins of Carthage are a UNESCO World Heritage Site located in a suburb of modern Tunis. The site is a layered puzzle of history. You can see the massive Antonine baths and a large amphitheater, testaments to the city's second life as a Roman capital. But looking closer, one can still find the faint outlines of the city that Rome tried to erase. The circular and rectangular depressions in the ground near the coast are the ghostly footprints of the magnificent Cothon harbor. On Barca Hill, excavations have revealed the foundations of Punic houses buried directly beneath the Roman city that was built over them. And in the Tophet, thousands of small stone markers still stand in silent rows. Carthage was destroyed, its libraries were lost, its people were scattered, and its history was written by its conquerors. And yet it endures, not as a living city, but as fragmented stones on the Tunisian shore, a quiet but powerful reminder that even the greatest urban creations can be returned to dust. The story of Carthage is a stark warning from history, but many other cities and civilizations have faced their own final days. What ancient cities rise and fall should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want to journey back into the dramatic stories of the ancient world, make sure to subscribe and press the notification bell for more.